I think we're overdue for another Half-Life 2 Done Quicker commentary. And yeah, the last one we did was Train Station in several months ago. I don't remember when exactly, but yeah, we had people like trying to dibs on Canals, and then like I just thought, okay, we'll let them do Canals then, and then nobody did Canals. So I guess I'm just gonna have to do it again. But yeah, I said I was gonna do Canals anyway, but here we are. So where did we leave off last? We left off last with Rama running down a corridor with a bit of wood where he trigger delays and then clips up through the ceiling. Now if you're just starting here in this series of commentaries, then don't start here. You need to start at the first video, because otherwise you're not going to know what the fuck I'm talking about. I've got an entirely separate video dedicated to how JClip works and how save loading works and all that stuff. That is in an entirely different video, so watch that before you watch any of these. And in the last video I did, I explained how trigger delays work, so I'm not going to be explaining that again. So if you want to know how those work, watch the previous video, please. So, now the next person to do a segment is, you may have heard of him, his name is Aimer. And he's a guy from the Counter-Strike bunny hopping community. One of his friends, or somebody he knew, or someone on our team that knew him, basically asked him to join the run, and he did for about one segment, and this is his segment. And this is an interesting segment because he's currently on top of a clip rush which runs along the top of these fences here, and that's because I guess the mappers didn't want people to be stacking props to like jump over and then get on top of the fence to just skip most of this bit. So they made a really tall clip rush. And a clip rush is basically an invisible wall that prevents a player from getting anywhere fun or, cheating. So at the moment we're on top of a clip rush, and I'll show you what a clip rush is now. It looks like this. So see these purple lines here? This is a clip rush. So in this segment he ends up around about here-ish. And yeah, you can walk on top of these. And there's a hole, there's a gap here where he had to jump across. And then it makes like a 90-degree turn, two 90-degree turns, and back along there. Which means he had to sort of line up this jump so it went diagonally. But not only that, he had to also make it on top of this really thin clip rush, which is these two tiny purple lines here. He had to make it on top of that, and then also somehow circumnavigate this block that's in the middle of it all. So yeah, it might not seem very significant, but in reality it must have been pretty hard for him to figure out. So this is what it looked like. Just pretty much a perfectly diagonal line across that clip rush. So then we fall down to here, which you're intentionally not supposed to take any fall damage, that's why it's there. And then SNDREC, who's the guy who got Aimer onto the team originally, he only did one segment and then disappeared for the rest of his life, but so he lands on this and he grabs it and he does a pretty quick prop fly, and then he sort of I recall this segment being really difficult because there are some things in the way that you have to avoid. There's all these like blocks in the way, supporting columns, I guess. And you couldn't go too high, otherwise you ran into them. You couldn't go too low, otherwise you just wouldn't make it up to here. So what SNDREC or SNDREC, I don't know, I forget how to pronounce his name, he basically stops in midair and then jumps on it again and gives himself one last little boost so he can get up onto the platform. And then he stops and he slides it past these boxes here, which there is a small like gap in between the wall and the box. He could slide that through, and then he just jumps over it, runs down the hole with it, and then prop flies up to this green grass area here. Now you're thinking, why wouldn't we just go here, J-clip, or like go down here and then J-clip up to here where the green grass is? That's because we had no idea J-clip existed when we were doing these segments. Yeah, so I think we spent like an entire 3 weeks or something on this one map, so we thought we didn't really need to redo it. It was good enough as it was, and that would be like I don't know, like a 5 or 6 second time save, and we thought it just wasn't worth redoing all of that, like from the beginning of all that all the way down to where we were here, just to do one J-clip and save 5 seconds. But another argument against it was that we already had speed from this prop fly, and we used this to get a bit more speed as well. So had we come up here, we would have had to sort of do a slow accelerated bunny hop, you know, to where we wanted to go, rather than use that prop to give us a boost. So yeah, that's why we didn't redo that. And yeah, he uses it. He sort of does a prop fly, and we do this throughout the entire run. We prop fly on something, and then we just don't continue the prop fly because it gives us a nice boost. And then he holds it in the way, and he holds it above his head, because when you're going too quickly with a prop, let me grab this. When you're going too quickly with a prop, sometimes it'll just run into your head, and it'll stop you dead like that. So we have to sort of hold it above our head, kind of like that, so we don't outrun it, and then it runs into us and stops us. So that's what he's doing here. Like, he puts it above his head like that, and then slows down a bit. Yeah. So what he does next is he falls down into here where there is a trigger, which changes the level to Canals 01A, I believe it was. And this is the trigger. So he falls down into that, and then Rama does a trigger delay, and then he touches the trigger there, and then he initiates the trigger delay, prop flies back out, and then bunny hops all the way into the corner of the map here, where the trigger delay ends, and then we end up much further into the map in Canals 01A than we would have been had we just gone the normal route. So again, I've already talked about how trigger delays work, but he touched this and delayed the map change, went into the corner. Then when the map changes, he would be relative to where he was here in the next map. So let's go to the next map. I don't think that worked. No, it didn't work. Where are we? Right, so this is sort of, you can see the rest of Canals 01 here, and what Rama did was he prop flew up into this bit, and then where was it? It was here. So he went from this area, jumped all the way into the corner of the map, which lands him here in the next map. So that means we've skipped all of this, so going all the way through there, around here, and pretty much most of the map. And that's wrong. We ended up here, and then S and direct just bunny hops to the end of the map, cleanly through the pipe here, and then from this point we don't have to do the physics puzzle, because we have enough clearance, enough speed to just turn the corner. Let's go to the next map. The next map triggers here. So Rama turns the corner, and then he hits this slope here. Well, actually, there's more to it than that. So, when you duck spam, and duck spamming is basically just spamming duck a bunch of times. Is there a bind for this? I think it's... yeah. So we use source pause tool to do duck spamming for us, which makes the run easier. It's also allowed in scripted category. But when you go through this trigger here, which is a push trigger, so you may notice I'll be standing here and I'll move into this and it'll start pushing me down. That's called a push trigger. If you duck spam when you're in a push trigger, is this still working? Yeah. When you duck spam in your push trigger, you will sort of enter and leave the push trigger again and again and again, which adds more and more speed. So, for example, it just gives you a bunch of speed like that. So what we're doing is we're touching it, leaving it, touching it, leaving it, touching it, leaving it, a bunch, so we get a bunch of speed. But we have to be in midair, otherwise the muck slows us down. Like that. And the original Done Quick team from 2004, they discovered this long before we did, so shoutouts to them, I guess. So Ram initiates the duck spam and he goes through the push trigger, and he uses this slope here, this one, and he bounces off the terrain and basically just flies. And it's so quick you can't even keep up. Hits this, and you can hear something breaking as well, and that's this piece of wood here. He hits it and he breaks it. And then he basically clears all of this and then ends up towards the end of the map. So he collects some health and then he does another trigger delay, because the next level load trigger is here. And as he's trigger delaying, he goes around the corner, and notice how the pipes just end here. So this is still before we discovered J-clip, because we could have just taken a barrel and done the same thing, but at the time we didn't know about it, so we just did this clipping trick instead. So when the trigger delay ended, he would have been touching the wall here, which when we load the next map, puts us inside of some pipes. That means we're stuck, and of course, if you saw the last video, that means we can save, load, clip up through the ceiling here. So this is where he would have been. I think you can see that frame by frame. So as you can see, he's gone through the level and done the trigger delay, and just as the level changes, as he hits the wall, the pipes show up and he's already started to save load up. So that's how we get out of bounds in this map. So he jumps to the left a bit and we do some more elevatoring. I've already covered that in the previous video. He does some save load clipping or elevatoring. I can't remember what I referred to it, but it has two names. And he goes from here, any elevators or save load clips all the way up to the skybox. And again, I've discussed this before, but the skybox is like an invisible box that covers the entire map. And when you're out of bounds, you can clip through the skybox and stand on top of it. And that allows us to skip a lot of the map. Sometimes it's slower, sometimes it's faster, but in this case, it's much faster because you have to, by doing this, you skip this labyrinth of pipes and all that. So we have Lunar. I think he got, what? Is this the only segment he got? I think it's the only segment he got. He save loads, well, Rama does the save loading, but we should stop minimizing. He falls off the edge of the skybox where this sort of protrudes the skybox and falls underneath just before the map changes, or just after rather. And then save load clips up, and here we have another trigger delay. This is a particularly confusing one because there's no sign of it, you know, making total sense unless you looked at the map yourself. So he starts the trigger delay, turns the corner with the script. He goes in here and he like stops the fall damage by landing on this corner here, which must have been pretty fucking hard to pull off because every time I tried it, I hit this thing and lost a bunch of health, and we needed the health for canals, the rest of the canals anyway. So hit the corner, and then the trigger delay ends here, and the next map loads, and suddenly we're just in the middle of nowhere. So let me show you how this works. This is where he's ended the map after trigger delaying, so let me load the next map. And then that puts him in a place that is already really far out of bounds in the next map. So if we go back and we look down here where the pipe would have been, it's gone now because the mapper didn't want to waste rendering any assets, I guess. But this is where the pipe would have been in the last level. And he ended up sort of round about here, further into the pipe, which is what lands him in this area after the trigger delay. So he loads the map, ends up relative to where he was in the last map, in the new map, and this is where it was, where the pipe ended. So that was a pretty neat trigger delay he discovered, and again, save load clips at the top of the map where we go on top of the, I think this is the skybox, yeah. And what was the situation here? He sort of save loaded diagonally quite a bit, because the skybox has sort of multiple layers. Here it's a little bit lower. So as you can see here, here, he walks forward a bit and then we go up and then I do a pre-strafe. So that's because there's sort of an invisible gap we can't really get anywhere with unless we save load up a bit more. So that's what that little pause is. And then I do a pre-strafe and bunny hop crouched towards the end of the map. And again, I discussed this in the last video, we're not going very quickly here because we're crouched, and in this engine for some reason when you're out of bounds it just forces you to crouch all the time. I don't know why that is exactly, but it's just the way the game engine works. So another little thing to mention is hang on. I go straight ahead rather than directly towards the place where we want to go because there's a big hole in the skybox here. So if you were to just jump this way, you would end up falling off the map. So this is why I had to sort of make a turn, try my best to like cut as much time off of that turn as much as I could. And then just here, where this bit ends, is where the map ends. So we fall off the top. What am I talking about? It's where the skybox ends. So we fall off the skybox and fall underneath this bit. And then we save load clip straight back inbounds again. And little anecdote for you. We originally Hepluner, this would have been his second segment had he got this, and he did a really cool trick which nobody could match. In these boxes here, he did like a triple stuck launch. And if you know what stuck launch is, it's when you sort of jump into a prop that's at an angle and you just jump a bunch of times, and that builds more and more speed, exponentially. So the more times you jump into a prop, the more speed that grows. So he did a triple one. He jumped off this, which is already at an angle, hit this, which is already at an angle, and then he hit this, which is already at an angle. So kind of like that, except it was much faster. And then that like shot him straight into the end of the map. And Winded Cone came along and said, "What the fuck are you guys doing? Why aren't you just, prop boosting?" Which ended up being much faster. So he just he did like a miniature prop fly, which boosted him forward faster than anybody else. So he ended up with the segment. And then Rama, this is pretty self-explanatory because he's just bunny hopping straight through the map. He did this entire map in one segment because he felt like there really wasn't any need to break it up into multiple segments, because there's no clear, breakpoint in the map where we could, divide it up properly. So, we spent a good night, all-nighter, about 3 or 4 of us, grinding the fuck out of this segment till the wee hours of the morning, and eventually, it's like nobody could beat him. And he's doing a sort of Quake 3 strafe where he presses W and D and then turns to the side slowly. And then he uses that slope to jump over. And then he hits the change level trigger and gets to the next map. Oops. So this is kind of like what Quake 3 strafing looks like. You don't just turn to the left with A or D, you hold forward, sprint, and then sort of, strafe to the left while also holding forward. It's weird because some people in Coast were able to not use that and get faster segments, but in terms of Rama, for some reason in this map, he was able to get the fastest time out of any of us using that method of strafing. But yeah, this is where Dwamov would have used these rocks here to get over this cliff, because there is surprisingly no clip rush here. If I turn on clip rushes, there just isn't one. There's one here, but not one over the dam, because I guess they thought this wall would have been high enough anyway. But we just use this this slope here, specifically this triangle in the mesh, and we sort of strafe up along the side, go over, and negate any fall damage by falling in like this inch of water. And I think I mentioned this before, but you can fall from any height in Half-Life 2 into any depth of water and live. Oops, and turn off God. So that's like not even a foot of water, and I lived. So that comes in useful a lot in coast, but we're not in coast, we're in canals. So he finishes the map and he touches this trigger here, which is the change level trigger. And what that does is it basically skips an entire part of the map where you go around this huge ring and then end up back here. So it's a pretty nice skip. And then here, people call me a cheater for this, but I think it's just optimization. Around like the start of the run, I bought a DualShock 4 controller because I wanted to emulate some games, but I didn't have a really nice controller. So I didn't have a PS4, I just bought a DualShock 4 because apparently there were tools at the time that allowed you to use it with any game. So I thought, why not optimize this segment like crazy good with a analog controller? So that's what I did. I turned this corner really smoothly, it almost looks like a TAS with a DualShock 4 controller. And I didn't go through here because the turn would have been too wide and I would have ended up hitting this thing and not end up hitting the rocks that I need to launch off. And that little slope there gives me a little boost, so it gives me some more speed, therefore cutting down the segment time. And here we hit this rock, launch off this and hit the roof, which allows us to get on top of this fence. And you're thinking, gee, how are you not falling off the side of this fence? Well, there is a clip brush there. Can I get this? Sort of. Oh yeah, I did it nice. There's a clip brush here that allows us to just walk along the sort of in between it. And then we use this bit here, which is, it counts as a slope because we're going up it. We use this slope here to boost ourselves on top of another clip brush, which is all the way up here. Now, there is no other way we could have done this here. Prop flying would have been too slow. I don't know if it would have been faster to go up on top of here, but seeing as there weren't any props to conveniently take with us, to like go here and then wall climb up here and then potentially go along the top of here, we decided to just go with the normal route, or well, the route we found to be the most convenient. And plus there's a huge gap here we may or may not have been able to cross. So I jump down into here, negating any fall damage by landing in an inch of water again. Duck under those. Ducking under these wooden bits. For some reason, like, we were able to break the wooden planks in train station 05, I think it was. But these ones just slowed you way the fuck down, so we didn't break them. We went under them. Then we use this little slope here, which is also mud, which means we can pretty much frictionlessly slide across the top of it without losing any speed. And then we jump over this, and then Rama turns to the corner, like looks to the right really quick. That's because my segment was the fastest on this map to get to that point. But when we save, when we end a segment, we use a bind. Let me show you here. We use a bind that stops early. It stops the demo at no, it saves first and then waits 100 milliseconds or something and then stops the demo. That is used to prevent any like complications during the editing process. So this is what the our save bind looks like. So we alias this thing so we don't have to put this in a command every time. We just bind the S4v3 to a button, and as soon as you hit the button it saves, and then it writes this to the demo file so we can tell exactly how long the segment is accurately. Changes the sensitivity to 0 so we don't get any mouse movements which screw with the demos. It waits 100 times, which is like 100 milliseconds or less, which adds 100 milliseconds of time to the demo so we can edit it more easily, and it turns out more smooth in the end because we have a little bit more time to work with so we can merge the segments properly. And then it stops the demo, and then it opens the console to stop the game. During the 100 milliseconds of wait time, or less, I ended up clearing the corner here. Like, you can sort of see the direction I'm going from this point on. Like, I sort of thought, well, this is good, I'm just going to stop here. Turned out that in the next segment, when you load the next save, you just run straight into the wall. But Rama said, well, fuck it, let's just look to the right really quickly, and that'll just give us a small strafe to the right, and we can clear the side of this wall. So that's what this, sudden jump to the right looks like. I mean, that's why that sudden jump to the right is there, because we can barely just pass the corner. And again, this segment was really fun. I think Canals was probably the funnest part of the run for me, because we just, I don't know, it really felt like a community effort every time we ran Canal segments, because somebody would end up streaming and we would watch their attempts, like on our other screens or whatever, as they made up new routes, thought of new strats, grinded and all that, and we stayed up to the fucking early hours of the morning grinding this segment. Eventually Rama got it, but yeah, he pulled this off somehow. He got this ridiculously good time that nobody could match because of his really nice strafes. Now notice there, he wasn't using the Quake 3 style strafing he was using in the segments earlier in Canals, was it 06 or 07? Like, notice it's just a straight turn to the left rather than a sort of a wide strafe. Yeah, he uses this to launch up above here where he shouldn't be, across the top of this invisible sort of floor, and then straight into the pipe where he ended the segment, but not before the level changed. He decided that we could change, or sort of end the segment before the level changed to optimize it a bit more. And then this was a difficult segment because we have to, like, clear this part of sort of really deep water that would normally slow you down. So let me find some deep water. Is there any deep water? I'll just go to there then. But this is deep water, and you can't really bunny hop through it. I'm holding down space and nothing's happening. I'm sort of floating through it. So I had to sort of jump at the latest possible time where I could still jump and not sort of end up floating, which was about here-ish. Yeah, around about here or something. So I had to jump into this, like, there's a threshold, the amount of depth the water can be before you start floating in the water rather than jumping in the water. So I had to sort of reach the absolute, maximum jump in water threshold limit. In order to clear this long ass section of water before I could like hit the land again and not lose any speed. So that took me a lot longer than you would think just to do this short segment. And then at the same time we also went through a change level trigger, which was back there. So yeah, we ended up not losing any speed there, which is nice. Here we did the same thing, except we landed on this slope, which gave us a nice boost up over another really deep part of the water. So this again, it's like, you can't jump in this, you float in it. But with heaps of speed, we used this slope here, this tiny slope, to like boost us to this slope. So again, we don't lose any speed. So there's more to this run than you think. So we hit, whoops. Launch off the, I'm just going to use space from now on instead of clicking. Clear the gap. Hit this slope. Gain a bunch of altitude. And we just hit the very minimum there could be before you start slowing down in the water here, and then we sort of just slide up the top of that up the top of this slope here, which again gives us some more altitude, and then we strafe to the left here, sorry, to the right. Now we couldn't just go straight on because we had to clear another big obstacle, so we needed a prop to prop fly with. So we tried to, well, let me just explain this first. We hit this and broke it with our body, but at the same time we really tried quite a bit to also grab this health. Now, as you can see, we're much too far away from it, but at one point somebody did manage to grab the health and give us like 80 health, which would have been which would have sped up things quite a bit in the end, but it just didn't work out. So we strafed to the end, and just as we hear the braking noise, I hit the E button, which happened to be there, and I picked up this piece of debris. And it was in just the right orientation as well. So Rama used what little speed we had to sort of strafe around the corner and then start prop flying over this gap in the water again. And he did some more Quake 3 style strafing around the corner. And this doesn't look very quick, but it's the best we could do, really. And then he slowed down there as to not hit the top of this. Because if you're going full speed, you always hit the top of this. And then Moo does something really clever here. He basically throws it at his feet, which miraculously, I don't know, I still don't know how he did it, because I could never do it in my attempts, and I guess it must have been just, RNG, and that sent him flying up onto this ledge, which allowed us to narrowly just get in there, get past the doors. Now, Dwarmov didn't have to deal with that because they had the airboat, and they used a trick where they pushed the airboat without the player in it through a trigger and then just got back into the airboat, which didn't trigger the doors to close. Whoops. Which I think was here. So there might show up something in the logs, yeah. Door moving, I don't think that makes any sense in this case, but that trigger, oh, that did work apparently, but if you, I think what they did was they pushed the airboat past, and just as the airboat was past the trigger, they hit E to like take the player out of, you know, player mode and more into camera mode, where they then sort of teleport into the boat, which means they end up skipping the trigger altogether, which means the door doesn't close and they just get to go through. But yeah, we had to touch the trigger. There really wasn't much choice in the matter. So here I did some wide angle strafing and I hit that hit this slope to get me to the top of this. I didn't do it quite then. Get to the top of this wall. And you may think, how come in the video the world is present, but in game it isn't? That's because we use a command called R portals open all one. And that isn't necessarily a cheat because it just increases the render distance, which I don't think can really give you any advantage. I don't think, but when we rendered the run, that's what we used. So it's just more pleasurable to look at because we can see pretty much everything. If I were to do just a straight turn right with a sprint at this segment, I would have lost a bunch of speed and not have been able to get to the top of here. I bunny hop along here and I use the edge of this train, which there is sort of an edge, yeah, this flat edge here, to use it as a ramp, and I boost it up here onto this bit, which gives me one extra jump and therefore allows me to clear this really deep water. So one more jump, and then I negate any fall damage by landing in the shallow water here, and then I go through the pipes at max speed, and then I end the segment before the level changes. And this is where the run died for about 3 months. There was no fucking progress at all during this segment. Like, we were hassling the fuck out of Rama to do it, and he was just like, no, I'm not interested. So, eventually, Finzi, who was a portal runner at the time, he still is a portal runner, but we basically, I don't think we hassled him into doing the segment, but we, you know, implied the fuck out of it to get him to do the segment, and he eventually said, yeah, I'll give it a try. And he took my fucking shitty 9-second attempt at this and took it down to 6 seconds. And this doesn't look that great, but considering it's a trigger delay, you don't have full easy control over your character, because while you're inputting weights into the console, that means you can't really interact with the player in terms of movement, because no other commands are entering the console, so you can't do plus left or plus right or anything with the controls. However, looking around doesn't register in the console as a command. It's just sort of built into the game as just like a camera movement separate to any of the other commands. So we end the trigger delay there, which again makes it look really weird. But this is where the trigger delay ends, around about here. This is where the next level loads. So again, we end up relative to where we are in the next map. And we end up just outside of the pipe here, which is out of bounds. So I did a, oops, I did a 2-jump, like I strafed and then jumped twice on here to get sort of to clear some distance, because when we were doing save load clipping we couldn't clip diagonally all the way up to here onto the clip brush, not the clip brush but the skybox that surrounds the entire map here. We just could not reach it at that angle. It's too like shallow of an angle to reach it at, because when you're save load clipping you can only go at like 45 degrees or more efficiently. Any less than that at like a, say like a 20 degree or a 30 degree angle, it just doesn't work that well. So I had to clear some space by jumping this gap. And I fall for a bit and then start the save load clip, and I just go straight up and then end up on the top of the skybox. And then from here we do a really fucking slow bunny hop, which would have been faster had we been inbounds, because we would have had the speed. But considering there's a toxic goo tunnel all the way through here, we would have lost a bunch of health. Probably not even survived in the end. So this is the only option we had, unfortunately. And I turn a corner here and I fall under the map, save load clip back up, and again onto a invisible floor. And Finzi returns with another good segment. He does a slope bug here on the very edge of that pipe and negates any fall damage. And the slope bug, what a slope bug is it's the game, it's sort of like a failure to recognize a specific angle as a floor. So for example, let me get out of God mode. I think I'm out of it. Yeah, God mode. If I were to approach this slope, which doesn't have any water in it, it will register that as just like a slope, and you sort of slide up it rather than hit it hard. If I went down it like that, it still registers as a slope. If I went at this slope like this, I die. But if I like fly at this slope at a more shallow angle with more speed, I just like slide up it. And that's a slope bug. I don't know who like programmed that, but it really doesn't make any sense in the real world or in the game even. But it's really fucking useful in this entire run, so we use that a bunch. And yeah, Finzi uses the very edge of this pipe to do a slope bug, so he doesn't lose any health. And we do not have much health at this point in time, so we have to go really slowly around the corners and the very edges of these pipes. Had we had more health, this probably would have been faster, but yeah, we just sort of not slope, but surfed the edges of these pipes. And then Rama picks up this box here, and he stops in such a way that the box turns into a sort of a ramp, so he can prop fly at more of a steep angle. So he's prop flying at about a 45 degree angle here or something, and he gets to the top of this bit, and then just we bunny hop across the top of here. Now, one thing we could have done quicker in this map, potentially, was we could have kept this box, and we could have used it to like gain a bit more speed like we did in Canals 01, like Ascendrek did with the pallet. Like he kept it and then he used it to boost and get more speed across the grass. But Rama just dropped it, so whatever. And then here we had to redo this segment a heap of times before we could survive this, basically. Because And like we were getting like segments with 8 health, 7 health, 5 health, 10 health, and then I got a pretty fast one with 15 health, so that's what we used. So again, we use the water to negate any fall damage, and then Finzi uses this slope, which you have to hit at a really particular angle. Otherwise you don't get enough height. And he just about makes it. And then I have to bunny hop, correcting so I have to bunny hop along this very straight and narrow path, sort of making minor corrections. You can see I'm sort of moving left and right a bit as I'm going down here because I don't want to fuck up the straight line. And then I crouch, jump over that. And I don't want to crouch too quickly, or for too long rather, because sometimes if you crouch and then you go below the standing height while still crouched, you lose speed when you uncrouch. So we have to maintain standing height while crouched there to not lose any speed. And then here, I didn't have to crouch because at standing position I got a little bit of a boost and one extra jump out of that, so that gave me a bit extra speed. And then here we use the very corner of that fence like we did in Canals 07 to boost across here. Now you're thinking that's not fair because this you just walk through this. Well, Valve are a bunch of weirdos and they kind of pick and choose what you can touch and what you can't. So I imagine, like, if you tried really fucking hard to get up here with the airboat, you probably could. So Valve decided, let's block him in here, but that's pointless because you can just jump across here. But yeah, you can get up here, which means Valve don't want you to go into this area, so that means, luckily for us, that this is all solid, and that you can touch it. So we make use of this as a ramp. So let's play that whole thing again. Quick duck, jump, bounce across through those. And I guess Valve thought, well, you can't fucking get up here, so let's just not make this, you know, clippable. Let's not have any collision on these props. So I jump across here, and this is fucking hard. This is a really difficult segment that Finzi managed to get. There's a gap here where you can easily fall into, so he had to clear that somehow. And then here, there's a wall here, and then here, there's a fence. And this fence is really hard to get around, so you have to get a really good angle to like jump across that properly. The gap is like this big, and when you're going at speed you have to time your jumps to be able to clear this fence, clear this, and clear the wall at the same time, and it was just killing me. So I went to bed, and the next day Finzi got the segment. Yeah, and he went across here, jumped across those fences, and then we used this slope to jump on top of a clip brush, which exists here, which, as you can tell, gives us an extra jump because it kind of seems like we're levitating here. Then we just strafe across onto the bank. So yeah, you can walk on this bit. So we decided that this was faster to go across the bank and then just make a turn here, because it seemed like every time we wanted to go down here, you just lost a bunch of speed and ended up going really slowly, and then you would have had to like strafe around this bit, which you would get stuck in and you can't jump in it. So going across the other side of this was much faster in the end. and then we surf across the wall to not get any damage, and then I turn sort of, hang on, let me load the next level while you're waiting. So towards the end of this pipe, I turn to the left a little bit by jumping off the bottom of this slope here. So as I sort of surf across the top of this, I hit the bottom of this slope, and then that bounces me towards the left. Like that, so it deflects me to the left a bit. And then that gives me some room to turn to the right again, which I can then use this corner of the pipe here to just fully clear the fence. And I really enjoyed doing that segment because it's satisfying to cross the to like get this really sort of tight jump and then make it over this. The original plan was stupid because we were going to do the opposite. We were going to hit this and fly up across here somehow, hit this roof, and then jump over the top, which was much slower, and nobody ever pulled it off legitimately anyway. So yeah, that was much quicker in the long run. So this is where we discovered J-clip pretty much, and we still fully didn't know how it worked until the end of Canals. And so the way this ended up working out for us was because the way J-clip works, as we all know, or if you saw the video previously, is that you have to be crouched in the save that you made in order to be able to use the glitch. So while I was flying over the fence, I was also crouched. So when we loaded the save in the next segment, you can always tell when the next segment is when the HUD flashes red, because there was no way for us to like get rid of this stupid red HUD flashing. So we just ended up leaving it in there, but at this point I'm still crouched, and that in turn enabled the J-clip glitch, which we still didn't know how it worked exactly. And while we were screwing around here, the plan originally was to get this pallet, and then we would just randomly sort of get stuck in the wall, or the ceiling rather, by prop flying through. So sometimes you get stuck in there on this lamp, for example. I don't think you can touch it. Yeah, you can touch it. Well, like sometimes you'd run into this and get stuck in it, which would allow us to clip through the ceiling, but I accidentally discovered that you could put your head in a prop and then save and then load, and it would make you go up, and I didn't really understand why. And then separately, Centaurium discovered that you could do the same thing, and then he sort of figured it all out and discovered that you had to be crouched to do it, and he figured out how to script it to make it work. So that's why at this part we just hit the barrel, stop, slow, way the hell down, bounce around these corners. I mean, it's not the fastest we could have done, but it was the fastest anybody had ever got it, because we hadn't like perfected the art of it, I guess. We still couldn't figure out how to do it properly before we even created the script for it, so we were just sort of trying it again and again and again until we got it. So eventually, as you can see, I ended up getting it just randomly, and as soon as I saw the thing stick through my head here, I just saved. And like sometimes you would get stuck in this really small gap that was in between here and out of bounds, like I'm stuck in it now. Sometimes you get stuck there, sometimes you go straight through. But I happen to get the fastest one out of all of them. and it worked pretty well, so we use that seg. We get here and I do the same thing where I do a pre-strafe, clear a little bit of gap in between the out of bounds, and then we save load all the way up to the skybox, which we can then skip pretty much all of this area. And this is interesting because it's the only part of the run where we actually save load down. Normally we're save loading up, but in this case there's a gap in the skybox where it's just too big to like, oops. There's a gap in the skybox where it's just too big to clear. Where is it? Come on. It's around about here somewhere. Like, I'm going pretty fast as it is, and then you fall off and then you just fall into this gap. So what we had to do is we had to we pretty much had to stop in our tracks and then save load down because the gap was still too large to cover or clear the gap. Then we had to save load down with a bunch of weights. Like normally we use 20 weights or something. Here I used, I think it was 60. So 60 weights makes us go down. So that's what you're seeing here, this sort of smooth down, then we stop, because that's what happens when you pause while you're out of bounds. You just lose all momentum. So like that. So when I saved and then loaded the end save for the save load clip while going down, I ended up losing all velocity. So we had to do another pre-strafe and then continue to the end of the map. Apparently there's a new glitch that makes this run faster, but I'm not sure how it works exactly, but we do the typical thing you see a lot of in this run, and you just fall under the map, save load back up, and then we ended up back in bounds. And then we come to where Elgu steals about 8 of our segments. Well, there's no segments like assigned to anybody, but there's a running gag around where you say, oh, I steal segments because I'm so good or whatever, but yeah, he came in and he just beat everyone. Like, nobody could get any faster segments than Elgu. And then he disappeared, and some say he still grinds to this day. But yeah, he got the fastest segment there. He got the fastest segment here, and he uses this prop here, this box. And he grabs it, and he jumps on top of it to get some altitude so he can cover all of this really deep water here. And then, for some reason, we don't know how the physics on this work exactly, but he like did a stuck launch on the edge of this tire, and then managed to clear that entire section of really deep water, and the bridge as well. So we didn't even know that it existed until he tried the segment and ended up doing that, so he saved us a bunch of time by discovering that during the run. He did the next few segments, which were pretty much just straight bunny hopping and optimizing strafes. He did a sort of like a wall ride along here and then strafed into this pipe. We call it the spooky pipe because it's full of zombies and shit. So at this point we're really low in health. And then Moo comes in, grabs the barrel, and then prop flies along the top of this. Now you may think, well, why didn't you just jump over here onto this and then continue along this ledge here and then into the pipe? The problem with that is, after this section, while we're in the pipe, we have to get up here somewhere because you cannot bunny hop in this water at all, it's too deep. So we needed to get up here. And that skips, you know, quite a bit of that map. Pretty much all of it, but that saved a lot of time. And then for some reason, I don't know why exactly, but we stopped dead in our tracks, turned the barrel around, and then prop flew with it across this really deep water. We probably could have got away with prop flying without stopping, but it would have taken ages and it would have been really difficult. So I think, you know, the best course of action was to just stop and turn it around for, you know, to avoid another 3 months of downtime on the run. So we strafe across the top of this wall to jump on top of this this area here, which has a really large clip brush on it. I'll show you. It has a really large triangular clip brush on the top of it to prevent anybody from, like, getting the airboat over. So yeah, this is how big it was, or is still. So this is nice because it gives us a lot of room to work with. And then I just bunny hop along the top of this and fall down into here. And then I jump a really large gap and just barely clear this fence to try and you know, take as much time off the segment as I could. And then this is an interesting bit. We fall into this corner here, where we kind of get stuck and then just lose all our speed. And then that's when I ended the segment. And then what happens is, well, I'll just play at full speed first. So fall down, get stuck, and I turn to the left and turn back again. And then the next level loads, and I get on top of a clip brush. Now, oops, this isn't a trigger delay. It's kind of like there was a wait period attached to the trigger anyway, so we didn't have to put any weights or add a trigger delay. So this is where the trigger is, and then I just turn around. Well, I touch it, turn around, and then jump back up here. And I haven't even like initiated a trigger delay or anything. There was just like a short wait period before the next level loaded for some reason. But what that does is it allows us to move into the position of where a clip brush is in the next map, which is Eli 01. So then what we do is we, you know, save load up to the top of this, and then we're able to jump and skip all of this deep ass water. So that is Canals. It took a long time for me to do this, well, not to do it, but to get around to making this commentary. Sorry about that. I'll try and make more of these unless other people are absolutely fucking adamant that they want to commentate on other maps or chapters. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I cannot tell when the next one is going to be put up, but when it is put up, I'll put an annotation in here. And yeah, see you in the next one.